Hello, Hollywood Time viewers. Judy Shields here. Today we are so excited and honored to welcome filmmakers Scott Alexander Ruderman and Rachael Dyer. Did I get that right?
Very close, very close. Ruderman and Dyer, but almost
Okay,
there.
Ruderman. All right. And we're here to talk about their amazing film. It's a documentary called Pay or Die. And yes, you guys are spot on with the title because after watching this, everyone is going to say it couldn't have been another title for this documentary. Woo! So there's a lot of things to talk about. First off, folks, it's going to open in movie theaters November 1st in New York City to kick off National Diabetes Month. Los Angeles and other cities will open November 10th and streaming on Paramount Plus on November 14th for World Diabetes Day. So that's kind of what this movie documentary is all about. For me, I like to know like the beginning of it. How did this come to you?
So, thank you again for having us, Judy. And we're very excited for the premiere of this film. We think it's a very important film for America. And hopefully it could open up discussion to make changes and policy changes so that everyone can afford their medication, life-saving medication. My name's Scott Ruderman, as you introduced me. So I live with type 1 diabetes. And being a filmmaker in the industry, as a freelancer, I always knew that, getting my insulin was expensive, but it really wasn't until, kind of doing the research when Rachael and I met. Rachael's a producer and we met on a project and we started doing the research. We were quite interested, like, wow, do people actually cannot afford their medicine? So we were in Canada together. We went into a pharmacy, and for me, it was a shocking experience to realize that I could actually get insulin way cheaper than back home in America. And, a vial of insulin in America is a few $100s, where in Canada, it was 19 Canadian dollars at the time. So that was quite a big shock. And for the first time, I felt like, wow, I am I a medical refugee here? I'm like, I'm accepted in another country because of my current health situation. So we came back to the United States and started, kind of breaking ground and doing the research. And the results we found were shocking.
It it is. I mean, just watching the movie because I had no idea what it was going to be about. There's all these deals with other kind of medications and drugs, and they had the one about the opioids, and I was just angry. I didn't think I could get more angry, and I'm gonna cry. And I got really angry when I saw this movie because it's just like, seriously now. I mean, the fact that you found the one, the gal, the woman and husband who lost their son Alec, where they had this. I mean, that was just to know that they're gonna rationalize their insulin and that they die from it. I mean, did you ever think of that for a moment dealing with your diabetes?
I mean, from my perspective, I
Yeah.
think that for as you can hear, I'm Australian and also half Canadian. I think that, and I've lived in the States now for 10 years, but it still is mind blowing for exactly what you're saying, exactly what we depict in the film, that in a first world country like America, that Americans are having to choose between life and death, buying their medication or a roof over their head. So that is just, again, I think it was very hard for us to process and very difficult for us to see this and witness it firsthand, but definitely something we wanted to bring to the forefront and into American homes, because this is an American problem and it's happening, day to day as we live, in this society. So I think that that's what was, the most hard hitting thing for us. And I'll let Scott speak as to being a type 1 himself.
I think it's important for everyone listening and watching that what is rationing insulin, and that term is a very common term in the type 1 diabetes world, and type 2, or anyone that is on insulin, and what that means is you are using less insulin because you can't afford the amount of insulin you need to get you through your month. And it's very dangerous and extremely not recommended, because without insulin, you could die within 72 hours. It's in fast. The body will shut down, and you will go into a coma and you will die. and a lot of young people who are not making a ton of money and have expensive bills to pay to afford their insulin kind of face this battle of like, well, I can't afford it this month. Well, I have a little left over. Maybe I'll just use a little less. And they're knocking on death's door right there. So that's what insulin rationing is, and it's very scary. And I think anyone on a life-saving medication has this scary thought, well, do I have enough? What if something happens? Reserve insulin, that doesn't exist. So it is very scary.
Ugh, it is. So as far as what type of research did you have to do to find the subjects of like Nicole and James and, those that you used?
I think for, as Scott said, when we came back from Canada and we started to really dive into the development and research behind this issue, the sad part is that there was a lot of it and a lot of people struggling. That's how tragic, and still is. And that's what was so tragic, is we had a plethora of stories and people coming forward to share their own personal experience with, not being able to afford their insulin or having to do insulin rationing. But Nicole and James, their son, Alec, as you'd mentioned earlier, who passed away from insulin rationing, he had become the kind of poster child in the crisis and for this issue, because Nicole and James have become such strong advocates wanting to pass a bill on their state level and make a change. So we always knew that we wanted to come and meet Nicole and James and share Alec's story, because we had heard about it a lot through the community. In terms of Emma and Sandra, we actually found their story by reading a local paper where they lived, and we were introduced to their journey because they were traveling hundreds and hundreds of miles every few weeks to go to the pharmacy. That was the only pharmacy that would allow them to buy their insulin from. So even that in itself, having to travel such long distances to the only pharmacy that would supply their medication was horrific. And then we just found, obviously, the extent of their circumstances, which was, just so sad and telling. And then with Cara, who was the young woman, she was diagnosed in the height of COVID. So we obviously wanted to show what it was like as not only a newly diagnosed type 1 diabetic, but also someone who was suffering with a life-threatening condition and an autoimmune illness in the height of COVID, which was already so scary for, all of us during that time, but even more so for someone that had an autoimmune condition.
Yeah, I like the way that the one, a mother and daughter, that was so touching. And I mean, if you don't do anything in your life, you watch this and it's going to just touch you, how this mother and her daughter, who's, I think she was 14 or something like that, 12 or 14, wants to get a job to help her mom. And that they have to like go to Seattle and then get a car or whatever. They're living in their car and have to drive to Canada, and the daughter's nervous to go on the border, just to go get their medicine to keep them both alive. And the one point that I remember that she said, the mom, was that, people will say, because there are naysayers that say, well, if they just lost weight, they ate better. And it has nothing to do with that. And me not knowing about diabetes runs in my mom's family. And I've lost my mom, my aunts from it. And I actually just got diagnosed with, they say you're diabetic because your numbers are high. And so now they're telling me I've had the 3 months. I go to the get my blood on Friday, but 3 months of just depression, of thinking that I guess earlier this year I had a gallstone get into my pancreas. I don't know if that's causing this problem now. So I'm so nervous about going Friday to see what my blood work is going to be like, because it's just something that Scott, tell me what it's like there's type 1 and type 2. There's the difference, right?
Well, I think there's a lot of differences. I think, type 1, I need insulin every day, multiple times a day. That's how I regulate my blood sugars from either not being too high or, also not dropping too low. So, like I said before, without that insulin, I'm knocking on death's door in a matter of days. I don't want to speak too broadly for the type 2 side of it because there's a lot of different variations of type 2, but there is a lot within the type 2 that has a lot to do with lifestyle and, also, family members. It passes through hereditary as well. So, with type 1, in my experience with it, it's, without this life-saving medication, I'm dead. And it is very scary. And it also, it changes my life. It changes my lifestyle in the sense of I have to think about it all the time. And I'm prone to more health complications if my blood sugars are out of control.
But I think the most telling thing too, for everyone to remember is with type 1 is it is an autoimmune disease that can come out of nowhere, and it can affect anyone, anytime, no matter your socioeconomic background, your race, your, demographics, male, female. That's, what is so, important to understand with the difference of type 1 and type 2. And type 1s, unfortunately, once they are diagnosed as being a type 1 with diabetes, then they cannot reverse it, and they do need to take that medicine multiple times a day.
There's no cure, and you can't prevent it from happening. Whereas with certain variations and a large number of variations of type 2, there's a lot you could do to prevent it through lifestyle and activity choices.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how it was with the type 1 and because this is what's so great about this documentary. It's gonna, let people know who just get diagnosed what's really gonna happen. I read here, it says nearly 2 million Americans living with diabetes are being held hostage by the pharmaceutical industry, as many cannot afford insulin. And that's what you're saying, Rachael, is about how can they do that? How can this country, allow these people to go through it? And I mean, that's just one state.
It was in Minnesota.
And I think what they're going to help, I think it was Colorado. I mean, it's just amazing. It's like, what is it that, our viewers can do to help? Is there anything out there that you guys have discovered that how we can help?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of discussions happening right now and a lot of push for change. I think, due to a lot of the activism, the pharmaceutical companies have been responding, which is a step in the right direction. However, what we need more importantly is for bills to pass and laws to pass to prevent, pharmaceutical companies from making the price so, unaffordable. I mean, the fact is the prices were so high, and that was the issue. People couldn't afford it, and there's no laws or there's no bills that prevents these pharmaceutical companies from raising the price. So while they're offering all this in response to a lot of the advocacy and unfortunately a lot of the issues that that people can't afford it, they're dying. In response, they're kind of slashing the prices down, but they could very well tomorrow bring the prices right back up. There's no one telling them to do it. And I think there's a lot of bills trying to be passed through Congress right now to prevent these companies from doing that again. And so we need more push for that.
And I think the main thing that people could do is, just to summarize what Scott's saying, is that it's a federal bill that needs to be passed. So if everyone can write to their state and local legislators to ask to enforce a federal bill so that these prices by the pharmaceutical companies cannot go up again, as is they voluntarily lowered the prices. So that means they can just as well voluntarily raise them again.
Isn't that something that's like at the end of this film, that's like, folks, you've got to stay to the end, because there's some amazing things that you put up there about it, and how the copay has gone down to like $35, and imagine having to pay several hundred. Do you guys have like a website that our viewers can go to help with all that?
Yep, it's www.payordifilm.com, and on that website there will be a resource page with a lot of organizations that are doing a lot of work, to pass bills and things like that. So definitely visit the website. Stay tuned for the movie. If you can make it to the premieres in New York and LA, great. We'd love to see you there. We'll be talking after the films. And Paramount Plus on the 14th in recognition of Diabetes Awareness Month. So stay tuned.
Yeah, folks, if you can't make it out to the theater, some people still are afraid to go out or whatever. Get Paramount Plus. If you don't have it, this is your time to get it, because this is a movie that everyone should watch, because it's amazing. Also, in filming the movie, were you behind the camera, or did you have camera people too? How did that work?
So for the majority of the movie, it was, Rachael and I. We at some points we were a small crew, no more than 3 people at a time, sometimes very occasionally 4, but we were it was a very hard, difficult project to film, living with the condition, but also I was so connected to it that I think it proved a lot of access for us to get in depth as we did.
And I think that that's what, as Scott was saying, was so important, because we were able to build trust and relationships with a lot of our subjects so early on, because they could relate to what Scott was personally going through as someone who has type 1 diabetes, and then also to myself as someone who lives and works with someone who has type 1 diabetes. So it was a great balance to have, be able to build that trust with all of the people we were working with so very early on.
Yeah, that's what makes this even more heart, knowing that this is something you're experiencing, you having it and you having to deal with him having it. It just makes it had to been parts where you had to stop filming. Did you start to cry and have to kind of stop?
Yeah.
Oh, and then editing it is that had to have been something too. Was there footage that you guys couldn't use for whatever reasons?
Oh, we shot multiple years. So, we
did you?
started this project in the end of 2018, and I think we finished editing it early 23, late 22. So, it was it was a long project, but that's documentary. That's where you see change. When you're following a story, it takes time. It doesn't happen in a matter of days or weeks or months. It could take years. And to bring people on that journey, it took a lot of commitment.
But I think too, just to add to that, we worked with really incredible editors, Toby Shimon and Will Rogers, who were able to sit with the footage, and neither of them personally are affected by type 1 diabetes, which actually helped in the editing process, because they were able to see it from the outside looking in and really concentrate on the characters and their subjects, so that it is such an emotive film and you really feel like you're living and breathing with the experiences our subjects are going through every day.
And I always say, yes, this is a film about type 1 diabetes, but it's an important film for America. But more importantly than that, it's a cautionary tale for the entire world to understand and witness, what happens when a nation's healthcare system is treated too much like a business and not for the people. This is what happens.
Yeah, because it's they're not taking care of us, the people. It's they're taking care of their own pockets. And I just never thought that it would go to this. It's one thing where you're selling drugs to people that are going to be addictive and they don't tell you, but to try to hold us, folks like you, hostage for your medicine that you need to live. It's just, it makes me not be proud to be an American. It's oh. So did you have someone who did the music, who was that? I always like to know about that.
Yeah, we had a very, very talented composer called Todd Griffin, and he again didn't have a direct connection with type 1 diabetes or diabetes, but as soon as he saw Scott's incredible footage, just fell in love with it and was able to create such emotive pieces that really connected with each of the subjects and differently. So you could live and breathe and, learn about each of these characters through the score and through the music that was, played throughout the film. And I think that he did, again, like Toby and Will in the edit room, did such a beautiful job of marrying, Scott's incredible footage to these characters. And allowing people to feel as though they were there again
That's
in the
right.
moment with
he
them.
created a really good feeling throughout the film, with a sense of empathy, but also a sense of urgency that was really needed for the message, right? So.
Yeah, he did do an amazing job, because that's one thing I watch it twice. I watch it for different things, So of course it's like, get it over. All right, so now get some more Kleenex and listen to it. Listen to the different sounds and the scores, because that music means a lot to us as well. I was going to say that for the premieres, you guys should have make sure you bring Kleenex to give out, because folks are going to need it. So
it's definitely the number one thing we always tell people to bring if they can.
And they're angry tears, and they're sad tears, and they're happy tears. You have all three of those emotions watching this documentary, and I like that they're mad tears, because it's just, we need that to make a difference for folks like Scott and others that are having to deal with this in their lives. So, and I'm assuming, will there be a part 2 to tell us more states that are gonna pass, do you think?
I think the part 2 is going to happen in front of us, right? I think, staying tuned and putting pressure, and if you want to get behind the issue, you can, and that will be the part 2. Because if we can do it with insulin, we could do it for many more life-saving drugs. If we, that's the goal, is to make life-saving medications affordable in America.
So can you let us know about the premiere here in Los Angeles? Where will it be, so that our viewers can maybe attend that?
Sure. So in Los Angeles, the event will be happening at the Monica Film Center, and it is going to be on the 10th and 11th of November. There'll be 3 screenings on both days. I believe that they're 1 p.m., 3:30 p.m., and 7:30 p.m. And Scott and I will be hosting a Q&A after the event at the 7:30 p.m. on both nights, the 10th and the 11th. So we'll be there in person. And again, if you don't have a chance to have your questions heard there in the audience, we will be waiting around after and happy to chat to anyone who has any questions for us.
Oh, I'll make sure I put that on my calendar to come out and see you guys in person and support it, because that's what we're going to do here. We're the Hollywood Times. Today we have our YouTube Hollywood Times official. We'll be putting that up there as well. And we thank you both for making this documentary and spending the time talking with us. Do you have any last words about the film before we go?
I think if you can come out, it's an important time. The country needs healing, and everyone's affected by health. So this is one that really does have a fight with a potential positive outcome.
Yes, we do appreciate that. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.